Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 6 of Overexposed, the BWRM podcast where we talk about all things real estate marketing. My name is Jackie Kirk.
And my name's Dave Temple, and this week we're talking to Nick Tonzing. Hey, Nick, how you going?
G'day, everyone. Great to be here.
Good stuff.
Thanks for coming. So, Nick, can you just tell us where you're speaking to us from?
Yes, I'm speaking to you from what formerly was my daughter's nursery at my house in Ocean Grove. So, a lovely part of the world where we have the Southern Ocean at our footstep. Yeah, and currently sunny outside, and yeah, it's beautiful. Nice spot.
Awesome. And you're running a real estate photography business there as well. And also, what is your role within BWRM?
So I run or share a territory with Lucas Ewenhouse in Geelong, and my territory is sort of the western part of the Geelong region. So we have quite a number of agents in there. We work really well together, really collaboratively. Been there for 10 years and quite comfortable in that territory. Beautiful homes scattered all throughout Geelong, lots of interesting homes from new developments right through to the period sort of Californian bungalow. So, yeah, never a boring moment from a photography or video point of view in there.
Also a bit of a growth area over the last few years.
Yeah, absolutely. Certainly the last probably 3 or 4 years, it's really gone gangbusters down here. I think it's always had the potential to be a really popular area, but I think it's now been truly discovered by people both within Victoria, around Melbourne, and also outside to come and sort of, set up their homes and raise their families down here. So yes, it's certainly grown and continuing to grow. So from a real estate point of view, lots of opportunities. So yeah.
Awesome. And within BWRM Australia, can you tell us a little bit about what you're responsible for?
Yeah, so my role is Chief Financial Officer, and I say that very loosely. I think I drew the short straw when we were giving out roles within BWRM because I'd worked in banking. That was pretty much the qualifier. Okay, you've worked in banking, so you probably know a few things about banking and so forth. We need that. That'll do. So basically,
we just needed someone to keep the credit card safe from going. That was mainly
it. that was pretty much it. So the role has certainly grown quite significantly over the last few years. Sort of where it went from being sort of fairly basic, it's now starting to get quite complex as the business has really started to take off and get some momentum, particularly over the last sort of 12 to 18 months. But yeah, so I've sort of grown with it, learnt a lot along the way, had a lot of good support from a lot of people around me as well to help with things, which has been good. We've got some really good financial people around us, which is fantastic, and helps us to keep the business viable and helps us to make really good business decisions from a financial point of view. But look, my role really is to find ways to support the other roles in the business that are really sort of the development and the creative roles. And not to inhibit the growth of the business, but to find ways that we can make funds and capital available in a sustainable way that's going to help the business grow and deliver fantastic services for members. So I guess that's where I see my role is to be creative, not in a bad way, but to be a creative accountant.
I'm going to hold you to that, Nick, next time I meet. So don't remember your role is to enable me. So that's really interesting because, everyone we talk to, you kind of expect these people that are running these successful real estate businesses, you think, you must have been born a photographer, I suppose, but that's not always the case. So you were saying your background's in banking. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey from, the exciting, well-respected world of banking, which is obviously very popular these days, to where you are now? Happy to still be out of that industry.
I look back and I do think it was an inspired decision at the time, albeit a very scary one. But actually, it's funny. I did have 10 fabulous years in banking and finance. Before that, I was actually in retail with Coles Myer, and prior to that, I was in hospitality. So I've actually got a sort of gone from sort of that hospitality, retail, customer service background, which is what got me into banking. Because at the time when I went into banking, that's what they were looking for to manage their branches. And then from there, sort of grew through various roles within banking. which has then sort of led me to, getting into my own business. So, yeah.
Hospitality to banking is an interesting one. You basically went from "Can I take your coat, sir?" to "Can I take everything you've got, sir?"
Pretty much, yeah, and saying it in a really respectful sort of way. Yes, that's right. Yeah.
But I do suppose that gives you a really nice skill set where you've got that hard work and grit and being able to speak to all sorts of people that comes from hospo, but then the attention to detail and understanding of how a business works, which is really hard to find in creative roles often, that's come from your banking background. So paint me a picture. You're there sitting, banking, doing your banking thing, and you decide you don't want to do it anymore. What happened? Was there anything to do with recent events in Victoria, or was it before that?
No, it was before that. Look, I'd been in banking for 10 years and done various things. And one day I was just sort of sitting there, just kind of doing my thing. And we'd seen sort of a few different, the great thing about working with corporates is they spend a lot of money on development programs. They spend a lot of money on, doing guest speakers and getting people in to do TED Talks and so forth. And I'd just seen a presentation from a guy called James Castrison, I think his name was, who he sort of goes around and talks about, he was a kayaker and took himself across with a friend. They went across the ditch in a kayak from Australia to New Zealand. And I remember being really inspired by somebody who was able to just make that decision and sort of get up and leave what they were doing and just go and throw themselves into the unknown and embark on that journey. And so that kind of got me starting to think. And, as I was doing that, I ran into some people. It's funny when you start thinking and looking at that, you then sort of start to expose yourself in the universe to people who are doing that sort of stuff. I met a guy on a bike ride. We used to ride every morning, just in a group out of Bowen Heads. But I got really interested in what he was doing and his story. And, that coupled with a few other things really got me thinking I didn't want to be, age 50 and die wondering about whether I could in fact do something like he was doing, which is run my own business. So, it was really that moment that I decided that's what I was going to do and started exploring that a bit further. Now, a friend of mine actually said to me when I spoke to them about this, they said, "Do you actually like taking photographs?" When I talked about getting into this. And, I said, well, I actually don't know. I used to take photographs when I was at school on film many years ago, but I'm not too sure. So, I guess that sort of was the start of the journey where I started to get a bit interested in photography and bought a camera and started taking some photographs and really enjoyed taking some photographs, rediscovered, what it was like to be out there and taking photographs. Took terrible photographs. They were appalling. If I showed you them, you'd be disgusted at what I took. But that was sort of from there. I just kind of took that base route and started working with that, and really found that I just really, really enjoyed doing it. And it was just completely different to what I was doing in banking. I was out and about in the fresh air, out and about talking to people, doing things like that. And I've then just decided to make the move. Just decided that I was going to explore this option with my wife Mel, and we were going to get into this business together. She was keen after raising 3 boys to sort of start getting into something. And so together we decided we were going to buy an existing business, and we saw the opportunity to then grow that. And then shortly after we signed all of the contracts, we fell pregnant with our 4th child. There you go.
Wow.
Sounds like the main appeal was taking control of your future and running a business rather than from a photography point of view. Is that fair?
First and foremost, it was definitely that. It was, I was working as a small business area manager at the time in banking. I really loved working with small business clients. I loved talking to them about their businesses. I loved talking to them about the ideas that they had and their entrepreneurialism and, how they sort of went about it. And we only played a small part, which was really just providing the finance. But behind all of that was, the ideas and I guess the challenges of how you then go about and set up your own business and how you sort of take that idea and turn it from that into a thriving, sustainable money-making operation. So working in banking gave me a lot of great exposure to that. So yes, Dave, in answer to your question, we definitely I definitely wanted to experience that. I definitely wanted to experience that sort of what it was like to run and own and operate a business. And then once we decided what it is we were going to do, which was the photography part, which is where Guy came in and talking to him, that's when we settled on that's where we're going to sort of focus our skill set and work on how we transition from this corporate career into a photography business.
My experience of you, Nick, I met you when you came on as keeper of the purse strings of VWRM. But my experience of you is you're not someone that makes rash decisions. You're not someone that makes impulsive, gut-led decisions. You do your research and you analyse the risks. And I guess a lot of people, when they're sitting in a job that's paying them a consistent salary and they've got that responsibility and they have that sense of security, the idea of just leaving that and starting out in a new business with a new skill set must seem like just an unbelievably humongous risk to be taking. How did that sit with you, and how did you make that kind of mental transition from the security of a job to the risks of the unknown?
Yeah, at the time, I was when I really decided that I was going to pursue this small business, I was around about 40 years of age, and around me in the corporate world, not just in banking but in general, what I actually saw was a lot of friends, a lot of people who I knew, who I'd grown up with, who were all sort of reaching that point in their career where they needed to make a decision about whether they sort of stepped up into bigger roles, bigger management roles, or face the risk of being made redundant, right? So what I didn't want was I didn't want to have somebody else be in control of my destiny in terms of whether I actually had a job or didn't have a job. So I didn't want to be, age 45, 48, 50 and basically be called into an office one day, sat down and said, thanks for your service for the last 20 years, but here's a paycheck and good luck. I just didn't want to be in that position. So I wanted to be able to take control of my destiny, and small business I thought was a fantastic, well, I know is a fantastic way of doing that. So I guess how did I reconcile that risk? Well, it was also a risk staying in corporate as well. So, and it was weighing up that risk of being in corporate and having somebody make that decision for you, versus being in control of your own destiny. And some people choose to stay and fight the battle in corporate and move their careers upward, and that's great and good on them. For me and for our family, and I didn't just make it on my own and wake up one morning and sort of have a midlife crisis and go, that's it, I'm getting into my own business. It was long thought out discussions with my wife, with lots of other people, lots of other friends over that time, and talking through the risks and talking through the pros and the cons. And sort of, look, I've still got the due diligence document that I did on the business that I bought, and it's about 120 pages, which I'm more than happy to share with you if you want it. So I actually did spend about I actually did spend about 6 months every spare minute that I had doing the due diligence on the purchase of the business, and exploring all the risks associated with taking on a small business in Geelong, what the opportunities were, what the risks were, and what I needed in terms of financial buffer and so forth to be able to do that. And then before I actually bought the business, I went about setting up my financial affairs so that I could in fact afford to be able to get into business and sustain myself over the 12 months, which I knew was going to be a really hard slog, from going from this really good sort of monthly salary, 6-figure salary, to then not having any guarantee of any money whatsoever. So I kind of made sure I had all of that in place before I in fact signed any document about sort of taking on a business. So I guess really, in summary of that question, there's risk in anything you do in life, I think. And I guess what you need to do is open yourself up to what all of the risks are and explore those risks, sensibly, and surround yourself with people who have really good perspectives. I had a really good accountant, really good lawyer. I had lots of other friends in various industries, other friends that had done similar sorts of things. So I was able to sort of call on those networks and talk to all of them, and get their input and feedback. Then just settle comfortably on the decision we were making. Once we were committed to that decision, we just went hammer and tong at it.
I think that's really interesting for me because I was in a similar position as I explained in my podcast. Got made redundant. I basically had the chat where everybody got made redundant, but I already knew I wanted to get out of IT already. But there's another thing that was playing on my mind while I was in IT is that I could spend another 20 years in this job, but if I do go up the chain, I'm not necessarily going to enjoy that bit up the chain as much as the attraction for me was at a certain level. That doesn't mean I'm going to enjoy the job at a higher level. And 20 more years at a higher level that you don't enjoy is going to seem like 40 years. And you still run the risk of being made redundant at that point. That was one of the key drivers for me. And I think, particularly when people get to that sort of, I'm not going to call it a midlife crisis because I don't think that's what it is, but particularly when people get to that stage where you've been in a job for 15 to 20 years or in an industry for 15, 20 years, you do start to move out of the appealing bit of the job. You can see a lot of people around you's head drop, and you can see them start thinking, do I want to be here anymore? But it is a huge jump to go from the security of a wage to small business.
It must have been a huge mental leap for both of you. I haven't really been in that position where I'd been in working for the man for that long because I'm much, much younger than you both. But
we can take one of the muches out of there, surely.
I think I probably could add another one, but psychologically, we often see to go when you're running your own business, when you've been working for someone and you've been told your roles and responsibilities, and you're just kind of used to being told what to do and doing it, to then go into something where you have to drive yourself, where work isn't going to walk through your door. What was that like? I suppose it's directed at Nick, but you could both answer. How did you motivate yourselves to get out there and take full responsibility, or did it not take much motivating?
I had 4 kids and a mortgage, so that was like a massive motivator for me to get out and first and foremost. So yeah, look, there's the reality of having a family and needing to provide for them. So that was the first. Yeah, that was a massive motivator for me. But I also, like I said, I didn't take this decision lightly. I wanted to challenge myself and see if I could do it. I didn't want to die wondering. I didn't want to have that regret in life in age 50 or whatever. And I'd spoken to a lot of people who did have that regret, which was they wish they had done something or followed their passion when they were a bit younger, rather than sort of doing or staying in a job that they didn't particularly enjoy. And so for me, I set that challenge for myself, and so I wanted to be successful, and it really had nothing to do with being rich or whatever, or it was really just wanting to know and satisfy my own internal curiosity as to whether I could in fact do it, and showing to myself that I had the confidence and the will and the resilience to do it, and look, I won't lie to you, it was really hard. There was a lot of sleepless nights in the first couple of years, right? But the motivation to be, to prove to myself that I could do it, or both for myself and Mel, that we could do it together, and be able to create this sort of, work from home lifestyle. And, it was something that we both worked really hard on. And I was only able to do what I did because she does what she does, and we work together in partnership, and together we were able to do it. And it's incredibly gratifying now to sit back and look at that and go, geez, yeah, we actually have proved to ourselves that we can run a business, and we can run a business successfully, and that's incredibly satisfying.
Yeah.
For me, it's obviously similar, fear of not being able to pay the bills, but also when I jumped out of the industry I was in, IT, I literally couldn't have gone back to a similar job even 2 weeks later. I wouldn't have been hired in that job because I was too old, essentially. But one thing that really struck me when I left, and I wonder if you had a similar experience, Nick, I left the business I was working for, went out and started to do training, and took a couple of photos and started to get into the new business. And then I had to go back for someone else's leaving do 2 or 3 weeks later, back to the office that I'd been working in for 2 years. And it was like a different world. It was like I couldn't imagine being in that situation again. It was a completely alien experience. I wonder if you had that sort of
Look, I did keep for a little while. For a little while, I kept in touch with with workmates and so forth, and yeah, it was quite extraordinary, talking to them and listening to how they spoke about, and which I would have been involved in all of those conversations had I stayed, and it was all very much, internal speak and restructures and things that were happening, and I don't know, it all seemed so unimportant to me at the time that I was talking to them. Obviously it was important to them, so I was listening to them, but I was just, really just, if nothing else, just counting my lucky stars that I'd taken that step to get out and to sort of get into something that was creative, something that was exciting, and something that motivated me every day that I loved doing. And yeah, it was just a breath of fresh air. So going back and talking to those people, yeah, Dave, I actually did experience exactly the same thing where, they didn't seem particularly happy. But that would have been me probably 6 months earlier, and I would have thought or said that I was, I was happy. But I didn't actually realise it until I got out and experienced it and did something different. Yeah,
yeah, and the difference when you wake up in the morning between working for someone else's business, I've sort of said before, you wake up and you're working as an employee. It's what am I going to have to do today? Whereas when you're working for yourself, it's right. What are we going to do today? There's a huge psychological difference.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, most definitely. I mean, preparing a PowerPoint presentation is fun, but it's probably not something you want to do.
You can do that as a hobby.
Not something you want to sort of do all day.
I think you need to try some new things. So Nick, I'm imagining other Nicks in the world listening to this and going, they're sitting in their cushy salary job and they're going, real estate photography. What is that as a business model? Is that sustainable? Can you make money doing that? And knowing what you do now and what you've done now, if you were talking to someone who's just purely focused on whether this is a viable business, what would you say to them? What are the kind of strengths and weaknesses of running this sort of business?
So the first thing that I would say is that the Australian economy is set up to support the housing industry and the real estate industry. People love buying houses. Australians love houses. The idea of home ownership still sits sort of very high on our priority list, that sort of aspiration to be homeowners. And so what I've observed in my time working in banking, working in retail, for as long as I have, is that I've never really seen the housing market sort of go catastrophically off a cliff. So there's always been opportunities within the real estate market within Australia. So boil that right down to what we do, which is, we're just one part of a whole big machine that actually keeps that going. There's trades, builders, there's developers, there's real estate agents, there's, advocates, stylists, all of that. And we're just all part of that sort of machinery. So I would say if you're looking for a career as a real estate photographer from a business point of view, then it is absolutely a fantastic business to look at. There are opportunities everywhere. But, you can't just walk into it and hope that it's all going to happen. You need to work really hard at it. You've got to have the skill sets. You've got to know how to take a photograph. You've got to know how to build relationships with people. You've got to know how to be able to provide good levels of customer service, be responsive and be resilient. You've got to have those attributes. And you've also got to be entrepreneurial and have the will to want to run a business. So I think if you can put those things together, there's plenty of opportunities out there for anybody who wants to get into it. But, I would say if you sort of don't have those attributes, it's probably not for you. But then again, probably business is not for you. So, you need to have those attributes no matter what business you do. But certainly within what we do, within the industry, it's a big industry and it's a big driver within the economy. And, while, if the housing market sort of falls over, then Australia falls over, basically. So, I think there's opportunity to be had.
I guess something that I learned, particularly through COVID, but was the resilience of this industry in particular. So I'm kind of imagining, start your own real estate photography business or buy a Domino's franchise. You know what I mean? Like we've got the real estate businesses, particularly the ones that we run under BWM, we've got very low overheads. Like we're not everything kind of seems linked to our production. So if you're not working, you don't have a huge amount of bills to pay. So you can kind of weather the storm, which is what happened when, we were all in lockdown and that sort of thing. So that's another strength that I've really noticed here, particularly even when in how we've seen the market shift a little bit in Sydney recently, whereas at the end of last year, we had lots of opportunistic people selling their houses to cash in, and that was where our money was coming from. Whereas now we've got a lot of people kind of moving up the coast, trying to release money from their mortgage, but the end result is still the same. People are still selling their houses and they still need photography. So I found that to be another major strength that I think gets often overlooked when people look at our business.
Yeah, absolutely. There's always people buying and selling houses, and whether it's for a good reason or not so good reason, within the Australian market anyway, there are people doing that. Now, through COVID, we just that was just an exceptional period, I think, where we had a combination of really low interest rates. Money was relatively easy to get a hold of, and people were borrowing and pushing prices up, and that led a lot of people to jump into the market, and so things were really good. Now things are not so good, but there are still people out there. There's still plenty of activity. You've just got to be able to adapt and move yourself in that direction. So yeah, we're the same. We're kind of seeing now a lot of people are sort of offloading assets, and so we're not doing all the big premium shoots. We're not doing huge amounts of video volumes like we used to, because people don't have those budgets now in the marketing, but they have budgets for other things, and so we have other services that we can provide. So right now we're doing drone photography with just about every single property. So because buyers are trying to broaden their appeal in the most cost-effective way out to the Australian marketplace, and showing proximity to things is really important. So drone photography is a really good way of doing that. Virtual furniture, people don't have the budgets to spend on styling homes like they once did, and because they're selling assets that they don't necessarily live in that are unfurnished, then we have a big demand for virtual furniture, for example. So those sort of digital sort of solutions are also really important. So, I mean, what I've found just incredible about this industry is the way that it evolves. When I first started, we were doing 10 photos and a basic floor plan. That was pretty much what you did. And you have a look at it now and what we're actually producing in the same time frames. I mean, we're talking about videos, full property videos, now being turned around within 24 hours of being shot. We're talking about marketing campaigns which include 20 photos, probably a twilight shot, floor plan, maybe some virtual furniture thrown in there, and a video, all back within 24 to 48 hours of the shoot day. I mean, that's incredible innovation within an industry over that time, and incredible responsiveness to be able to meet that need. So the industry keeps evolving. There's lots of really, smart, intelligent people in this industry that are helping us to evolve. And so it's an exciting industry to be in because of that evolution, and because of the way in which, the products, continually keep getting developed.
And so, Nick, did you have any sales training? I just want to take it back to your story. So you've bought this business, you've got a baby on the way, there's a little bit of extra pressure. Did you have, you've now also got to teach yourself or be taught this new skill of photography when you've been in this kind of numbers mind frame, you suddenly got to go full creative. It's such an enormous shift mentally, physically, all of it.
Yeah.
How on earth did you do it?
I was lucky that I had lots of good people around me, and I leaned on a lot of people. So with the photography side, starting with that, I was terrible when I first did photographs. Like, I mean, they were so bad. But the one thing that Guy taught me was that all I needed to do was to be better than anyone else out there who was shooting at the same time. So I just focused on that. So I spent every waking hour looking at retail sites across Australia, across the globe, really, and going into YouTube tutorials and all of that sort of thing. How to, what does it take to take a good photo, and then just really trying to learn that way. And I actually went and did a course at TAFE to learn the basics of digital photography, because I'd only ever learned how to do it on film. So and then surrounded myself with all of these good people who knew what they were doing, and just got them to give me feedback constantly on the photos. Like, I had anyone who was prepared to look at a photo, I would drag them in and get them. So tell me what it is you like and don't like about these photos. I said, be honest on both. And I just learnt just from seeking feedback, opening myself up to that, not being too proud to the fact that, just realizing that I wasn't a particularly good photographer, but I had to learn how to be a really good photographer, and that's what I did. I even went to agents, and I said to agents, give me feedback on these photos. Tell me the good, the bad, the ugly you're seeing in these shots. And they would tell me, and if the shots were bad enough, I'd go back and reshoot it and get it and do it better, and then get it back to them and get the photo shoot. I wouldn't accept mediocrity, I guess. So
yeah. Well, it's really interesting because your work now is amazing. I'd say some of the best photography I've seen, and I'm only saying it once while it's recorded here. And it's interesting because now you are that person providing feedback to your contractors, and that's something that I've learned a lot from you, is how to manage and nurture really high quality contractors. Can you tell me a little bit about that? I think on how you've been going about training a team.
Yeah. So I guess what I do first and foremost is I just sort of meet up with contractors, because we get a lot of requests, and I just love meeting people, and I kind of sort of have a coffee with them, and I guess get a vibe from people when I speak to them as to whether I think they're going to be worth the time or not, and invite them out initially just to spend the day with me, just to get a look at what we do. And I'll get a sense when I'm on site in terms of how they engage, how they're, what questions they're asking as to whether they're going to be worth my time. And once we sort of get through that, and we sort of get past all of the, pay stuff and what they get paid and how the whole thing works, what I'll do, no matter what level of photographer they are, is that I'll get them just onto just basic rental shoots. And this is where it's fantastic having a really good base of rental clients as part of your customer base, because what's great about rentals is it really focuses the photographers on having to take the best shots, the best 6 or 7 shots that you would need to provide in any house. So I train them on that first and foremost, is getting the best shots. Doesn't matter what the house is, I just want you to get the 6 to 7 best shots that we need to get, because that can then be upscaled to any house. If you've only got half an hour to do a $10 million mansion and the agent needs these shots tomorrow morning to go into a press run, well, at least you can go into that house, assess what are going to be the best shots, and get these 6 best shots to be responsive to that agent's needs to get a press run up and going, and then get back and do the rest of it later if you need to. But really learning at the get-go and having really ingrained into what the best shots are. And that's how I was taught, was to get the best shots. It's how Guy taught me, was just to get the best shots. And so I start at that base with them. I don't actually, until they show the competency around getting the best shots in those houses, then we start stepping up into, some of the mid sort of houses, into some sales houses. But it's all around getting them to get the shots and then having real-time feedback. So it'll be feedback with me either on site, because I'm observing them on site doing the shoot, what they're doing, but also having a look at the end result the next day. And, once they've sent the images off, getting them online, going through the photos with them, getting them to tell me what it is they like or don't like about the shots, what was going, why they chose a particular angle. And just doing that over and over again, just repeating that process, just getting them into the habit of looking at photos and understanding why a real estate shot looks the way it does, whether it's good or bad, and knowing how to identify that, so that as they grow into being a real estate or being an accomplished real estate photographer, they're making those good shot choices. And agents love a confident photographer. So if there's somebody who knows what they've got to take and is able to really become that advisor to the agent about what's going to make this house look best, then I think you're going to win the trust of the agent and the confidence of your contractor. And that contractor, I think, is going to always do a great job for you, because they've got that confidence, because you've invested the time in them so that they are making those good shots. And they're photographers. They take a lot of pride in their work. I've not got any contractors that work with us, myself and Lucas, who don't take absolute pride in the work that they're doing. And if they get feedback that a shot's not good, they want to fix it. So that's the kind of personality you want, the kind of, I suppose, culture you want in your team. So that's pretty much what I do.
I suppose the other benefit of getting them to shoot rentals is that, generally speaking, that they can be empty a lot of the time. Yep. So it's a focus. You've got more time to focus on what you're doing with the camera and what you're doing with the shot, rather than distractions of owners and furniture and all that kind of stuff. And generally speaking, there's generally not an agent there either, so you've got more time to take the time if you need to.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. And that's what we do. We don't sort of I don't push the guys for time or girls for time when they're doing the shoot, but timing does come into it. So you've got to, they do need to, progress. So once they've got the shots, then it's about getting them down from 2 hours to do a 6-shot rental. Saying, look, now you've got to do this in half an hour. So
is this where you do the trick that Guy did on you when you learned how to do a floor plan? Maybe for the benefit of our listeners, why don't you tell them how Guy taught you how to be quick on floor plans?
Yeah, so I didn't get any of that nurturing with Guy. I was pretty much thrown straight into, I was basically thrown into a house with a pad, a measurer, and a pen, and I had to basically do a floor plan in the time that he did a photo shoot. And if you've ever done a photo shoot with Guy, he's like got 12 shots done in 10 minutes. It's just ridiculous how fast he moves through it. So I was, I think, stuck halfway through the house when he'd finished a shoot. I was actually drawing, I remember this, I was sketching the kitchen, and out the back there was a trampoline, and he was actually out the back jumping up and down on the trampoline. He actually videoed himself or photoed himself jumping on the trampoline while I was sort of struggling to work out how the walls flowed in a kitchen. And then it all just got too much for him. His ADD kicked in, and he just kind of left the trampoline, and I think I was into the third part of the house, not far off finishing. All of a sudden I just hear this blaring horn out the front of the house, and this bloke yelling, "Come on, hurry up, we've got to get to the next job." So I had to quickly finish sketching the floor plan, literally raced out, jumped into the car, and he sped off down the road to the next job. Got a verbal because I was, not fast enough. So yeah, it was tough love
Picture
working
of professionalism, isn't he?
So, yeah. So no, he doesn't muck around with the training. You've got to deliver pretty quickly. So yeah.
Well, did the job.
Certainly did. Certainly taught me how to draw floor plans really quick. So it's certainly one method you could employ to motivate a contractor. That's for sure.
And so now your business is at the point where you're doing, how many shoots are you guys doing a month roughly?
Look, we're probably averaging, around about 100 odd shoots, 120 shoots roughly a month, thereabouts. We can, in the peak times, we sort of push up there towards sort of over 150, 180.
Wow.
So yeah, we do a lot of shoots. I mean, look, a dead week for me is about 30 shoots. That's pretty low. But on the high end, it can be a lot higher. So yeah.
And how big's the team to support that?
So I share a team. So we've got a full timer that Lucas and I share, who works with us, and then we have, I think I've got about 4 contractors that work with me directly. Yeah. Okay. And then we've got another shared contractor as well, who's been brought on predominantly to service one agency in Geelong, who's a big agency. They've got several offices. So most of our full-timer and contractor for that agency, they work on that relationship, which is great because they get that consistency. But yeah, I've now got 3 videographers, trained videographers as well, drone operators. So they're all sort of multi-skilled to be able to deliver all of those services that we need. So it's good because the bigger that I am getting, the less work I'm finding I have to do, which is kind of nice. So
yeah,
I'm able to sort of focus a lot more of my energy. I spend most of my time now on coaching, developing the team. So really sort of reviewing their work, spending time on site with them, just understanding, why they're making the decisions they're making on whether it's video, shots, whatever. Just having that engagement, and they love it, and I've got the time to be able to invest and do that. And the other great thing about that too, as your business gets to that scalability where it's sort of at that level that you can afford to run those contractors and keep them busy, is that you can be in a position whereby you can jump in and help. So, it's not all sort of roses in what we do. Like, we like to think we've got everything, down pat, but things go wrong, drones crash, batteries run out, tyres go flat on cars and what have you. So if you're out and about with these guys and you can jump in and jump on a job and take a little bit of pressure off them, it's a fantastic position to be able to be in. So Yeah.
You've built this business that's obviously sustainable, and it's probably gone beyond what you imagined when you were sitting in your corporate. What do you think it is that makes it so fulfilling for you? Assuming that it is fulfilling, you're still here, you seem happy. Yeah, like if what is it that you're really loving about it? Is it the creative side, or is it the people, or is it just the stability? What gives you the joy?
The thing that gives me the greatest amount of joy is I love bringing on new people, like contract. I love working with the contractors. I love bringing them on. I love helping them to almost go through a similar journey to myself, really, in real estate photography, and sharing some of the insights that I've had to help them to be able to be a successful real estate photographer. And we get a lot of photographers out there. I mean, there's no way I could go and photograph a wedding. I'm absolutely in awe of people who can do that. But at the same time, we've had wedding photographers that have come and tried to shoot real estate, and they need a lot of work, right? So, photography in real estate isn't easy. So I'm loving being able to work with people who want to add that skill to their game and to be able to help them to develop that. But I love the business side of it as well. So I love talking to people about business ideas. I love talking to them about how they can make their business run better. All of those sorts of things.
You've helped me personally. I've rung you and said, do these margins look right? What are the tweaks I should be doing? Where can I be saving money? Where can I be making more? I think you've got such an amazing mind for seeing it as a product, but not just that, but for selling it to the client and showing the client how it can be something they might not have thought of. And just little tweaks to where you're spending money that have made enormous differences. I know it's helped me a huge amount.
Oh, thank you. That's great feedback. But I love hearing that. So that's a living, breathing example of what it is I love. So if I feel like if I'm helping somebody, then that's fulfilling. So I love walking through a house with agents and just having an engagement with them about how they want to sell a house and what I think, and sort of bouncing ideas about how we might do the photography for it. And so, I love going and doing those pre-inspections and walkthroughs and seeing the house and having a chat with the vendors and the owners, and that sort of stuff is awesome. Such a privileged role to be able to be invited into people's homes and asked your opinion on how you can make it look the best you possibly can. So I mean, all of those things are just things that I would never dreamed of experiencing, but have had the absolute fortune of experiencing it as part of being in this industry and in this business. So very fulfilling. And I get to work with great people every day like yourselves, which is good. So
we prompted you to say that.
I've just got to, just for those listening, I've got a text message to say that in the comment section just on my screen. So I'm just following orders.
If you could go back 10 years to corporate Nick, sitting there wondering whether he can make this work, and sitting there looking out the window and wondering whether there's a better world out there to experience, what sort of advice would you give to anybody who, because I'm sure there are, I've spoken recently to other corporate Nicks who are wanting to make the jump but can't quite figure out how they would do it. What advice would you give them?
I would say don't be scared of exploring any opportunity. Now, that obviously we would love to see those people come into real estate photography under BWRM. That would be fantastic. But it doesn't matter what your idea is. If you're sort of sitting there and you're thinking, geez, I wonder if I could actually do this myself, explore that, right? And do it in a smart way. Don't, like you said, Dave, have a midlife crisis and give up everything and, basically run into something sort of, half-cocked without really knowing what you're doing. Once you've made the decision that you want to explore it, then do it properly. Surround yourself with really good people and talk to them and ask them questions and get curious about the idea that you have, and listen to everyone's advice. I mean, like good and bad. Like I had people tell me, "Are you nuts? What the hell are you thinking? You've got this great sort of paying career and you're going to give that up and just throw it all away to go after this? You're mad." Like I had people tell me that. And, that was fine. It was good advice because it sort of keeps you grounded and gets you thinking about that and how you mitigate it. So yeah, I would say absolutely don't let anyone tell you not to follow that idea, but do it in a smart way. Surround yourself with good people, get good advice and explore it and do the diligence. And don't rush into sort of doing something without having done that work. Yeah.
Awesome.
Nick, thank you so much for being on here. It's been a pleasure chatting to you and hearing your story. Chat to you again soon.
Thanks for having me, guys. Been great.
Thanks very much, Nick. Cheers.